Did you know that 67% of people who chase passive income from real estate never make a single dollar? And that's not my opinion. That comes from Bankrate's study in 2024. And I've been in real estate for almost 10 years, right? I spent over $1 million testing every marketing channel out there. And I have watched dozens of investors really build true passive income, while I've also watched hundreds, if not thousands of others absolutely fail. And the difference is not luck, and it's not skill either. It's the 67%, the 2/3 of people who fail, don't understand that passive income is a spectrum, not a switch. It's not passive or active. It's a spectrum of passivity. And so today I'm ranking 5 passive income strategies from the most work to truly hands-off so that you know which one fits your situation. Look, if you're watching this, you want income that shows up whether you work or not, right? And real estate absolutely can do that. It's such a wonderful vehicle for this. But if you go in blind, you're going to end up, frankly, with a second job instead of a passive income stream like you're wanting. And so here's what we're going to be covering. We're covering 5 passive income strategies ranked from most hands-on to truly passive. And for each one, I'll give you the real returns, the real costs, and who it's ultimately for. So that by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which path fits your situation and which ones to avoid. And stick around because I'm going to show you the one strategy that most investors should start with, even if it's not the most passive one. And there's really good reason for that. Here's our roadmap. We're going to start off with killing the myth that all real estate is passive, because understanding the spectrum is going to save you years of frustration. Second, I'm going to break down the 5 strategies from the most work to the least work, like self-managing your rentals, rentals with property management, REITs, syndications, and private lending. And then third, I will show you the path that most successful investors take, because, spoiler alert, they're not starting with the most passive option. Fourth, I'm going to tell you exactly how much money you need for each strategy, because some you can start with like $500, others you're gonna need like 50 grand or more. All right, let's get into it. So first thing that you need to understand is that passive income in real estate is absolutely a spectrum, not a toggle switch. And here's what nobody tells you. Where you start on that spectrum actually matters for your long-term success. On one end, you have self-managed rentals. You are finding the tenants, you are collecting the rent, you are fixing the toilets. It's not passive by any means, that's a job. On the other end, you have REITs, which is real estate investment trust, and you are buying shares like a stock. You're collecting dividends, you're never touching a property. That's truly passive. In between, you've got property managed rentals, you've got syndications, and you have private lending. Now, each one trades control and returns and time. And here's the thing that most gurus are not going to tell you. The more passive the strategy, the lower your potential returns and the less control you have. That's the trade-off. There's no free lunch. If somebody is out there and they're telling you, I'm making 20% returns doing absolutely nothing, they're either lucky, they're lying, or they're about to lose their ass. So let's break down each strategy so that you know the right pick for you. Strategy number 1 is buying a rental and you are managing it yourself. Let me be really blunt. This is not passive. This is not even close to passive, right? You are the one who's screening the tenants. You're the one who's collecting the rent. You're the one handling the maintenance calls. You're the one who's dealing with the evictions. And I did some research prior to this video, and I found a Federal Reserve study. I don't know how true this is. They said that it takes 6 to 18 months of intensive work before most passive income streams produce results. For landlords, in my opinion, it's often way longer. But here's why some investors still do this, because the returns on this can be absolutely exceptional, right? When you're not paying the property manager, you can keep that 8, 10, 12%. So if you're renting that property out for like $1,500, that is $120 to $180 per month that you're keeping. Plus, you are going to learn the business from the ground up. You're touching these people. Maybe you're not touching them, but you're at least talking to them, right? Like, you understand what makes a good deal. You understand what makes a good tenant, what makes a property work, what really like makes the deal tick, if you will. And I'm not going to pretend like this is for everybody, because it's not. If you've got a, demanding W-2, if you've got a big family, or you just don't want a landlord, like totally skip this. You do not have to do this. There is no pay your dues. You have to start here type of thing. This is choose your own adventure. But if you're young, if you're hungry, if you have some time, if you want to learn, that's where the education happens. Now, what happens when you're tired of the midnight phone calls or the nights, the weekends, the holidays? Well, that's where strategy number 2 comes in. Strategy number 2 is owning rentals, but hiring a property manager. And this is where I am for the most part. This is where most investors eventually land. You own the asset, you collect the cash flow, but somebody else handles the day-to-day headaches. And here's what it actually costs. For most of the time, you're going to find a property manager that's going to charge you 8, 10, 12%. Mine, for example, is 10% of my monthly rent. And so on that $1,500 per month property, like the rent is $1,500, I'm paying $150. But some will go down to 120, some will go up to 180 per month. But that's not the only cost. You also have like lease up, which is usually like 50 to 100% of 1 month's rent. Every time you have turnover, every time they need to find a new tenant. Plus, they're potentially marking up any repairs that occur on the house. There's vacancy fees, right? There's early termination penalties. So when you add this up, property management easily is going to eat in like $2,000, maybe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per year per property. And that's real money, right? Which brings us to the elephant of the room. I get this asked all the time whenever I'm at a REIA event. Well, Keith, how can you actually cash flow on a rental with a property manager? Like, is it even possible? Short answer, yeah, absolutely, it is. But only if you buy it right. If you're barely breaking even before management fees, then hiring a property manager will only put you in the red. And so my personal rule of thumb is if a property doesn't cash flow at least $300 a month before management, it's not a good candidate for truly hands-off ownership. When it works, this is semi-passive. Like every month I collect checks. I don't have to work for these checks. I'm still making the decisions, right? I'm still approving big repairs. Right now we're doing 2 repairs and I have to deal with that. I'm the one who's looking at it, approving it with the property management company. So realistically, I'd say I'm probably putting in like 2 to 5 hours per month into this. But I don't have any 2 a.m. phone calls, right? I didn't have to deal with a water leak, for example. The day after Christmas, there was a water leak at one of my units and I didn't know about it until one day, at least, maybe it was 2 days later. Now we're getting into the strategies where you can actually say like passive without the air quotes. That one's kind of on the fence. But now moving into strategy 3 is REITs, a real estate investment trust. A REIT is basically a company that owns real estate and trades on the stock market. So you can buy shares just like you'd buy Apple or Amazon or whatever. They collect rent from their properties and then they pay it out to you as dividends. And I don't have 2025 stats, but as of late 2024, the dividend yield is around 3.5%, 4% per year. Now, total returns, including appreciation, historically, averaging pretty good, 8 to 10% annually. And so for perspective, by the way, that's roughly in line with the S&P 500 over the long term. Now, some people will say, well, Keith, why would you buy REITs when you could actually just buy the property and you can make more money? Super fair question, right? Many people have asked me this. Well, here's my take. I love REITs. REITs are truly passive. And you can start off with as little as like $100, right? So barrier of entry is super, super low. There's 0 tenant calls. There's 0 maintenance. There's 0 property management headaches. It's immediate liquidity. You can sell your shares tomorrow if you need the money. The trade-off is you have 0 control in the deal, right? If the REIT makes a bad decision, you're along for the ride. And those returns, they're solid, but they're certainly not going to make you rich overnight, right? REITs are perfect if you want a little bit of real estate exposure without the work, or if you're just getting started and you want to like learn how the market moves. Markets are cyclical, right? They go in cycles. If you want to learn the market cycles while you invest some money for savings for something bigger, perfect. It's absolutely amazing. Now, moving one more, strategy number 4 is real estate syndications. And I also lumped crowdfunding in with this. Syndications and crowdfunding, this is where things get interesting and where a lot of people get burned, unfortunately. So a syndication is when a sponsor who's typically a super seasoned and experienced real estate investor, they're pooling money from a bunch of people in order to buy a large property, right? Most of the time it's like an apartment complex, a commercial building, a ground up development project. And so you invest, they manage, and you collect returns. Most of the time, this works out great. And your projected returns typically are like, they're pretty decent, 8, 10, 12, 15% IRR. Some platforms even advertise way higher than that, truthfully. But here's what they don't put in the marketing materials, is that real estate crowdfunding has had a rough go the last couple of years. There's been multiple platforms that have actually entirely shut down 2023, 2024, 2025. And some of these default rates on platforms are like 20 or 30%. So I'll be honest with you, I've actually seen this play out in my own network. I have a buddy of mine who put $50,000 into a syndication deal back in 2021, right? Projections looked amazing. Interest rates were really low. I think the IRR was like 14 or 15%. The sponsor was a very experienced, solid investor. Property was out of Texas. And if y'all don't know, interest rates in 2020, 2021, 2022 were really, really good. Well, in 2023, when this project was kind of scheduled to finish, late 2023, the interest rates went up in 2023, 2024, and in 2025. And so the sponsor couldn't refinance. And he stopped making distributions. And so now, like 5 years later, my friend's money is still locked up. And the last update that he got was basically like, we're working on it. You know, like he's not getting that 20%. He's just hoping to get his principal back at this point. So when these interest rates rose, the deals, they stopped penciling. Like on paper, when you're analyzing the deals, a lot of these sponsors who have never managed through adversity suddenly had to explain why returns weren't arriving. And so these risks are real because your money is locked up, right? For many of these things are like at least 3 years, if not 5, 7, 10 years that your money is buried in the deal, and the platform itself can fail. Like I told you, there's many platforms. They're not even in existence anymore. And the sponsor who's in charge of your deal might not even know what they're doing, right? Now, does this mean that you should avoid syndications or crowdfunding entirely? No, absolutely not. It's fantastic. But it means that you need to do some serious due diligence. It means that you need to check that sponsor's track record, not their wins, by the way. This is something that I see a lot of people do. They advertise their wins. Well, frankly, I don't really care about your wins. I want to know, how'd you handle the deal that went sideways? Tell me about that. How's that one going, right? You should also understand the deal structure. And a good rule of thumb, you probably heard this before, I'm not telling you anything new, is don't invest any money that you can't afford to lose. This is not a beginner strategy. So I'd recommend getting experience with REITs or direct ownership first before getting into this. My last strategy that I want to talk about is private lending. I love private lending, and this like so totally flies under the radar, but it's super worth knowing about at least. With private lending, you become the bank, right? You are lending money to real estate investors, typically for fix and flips, bridge loans, EMD, things like this, and then you collect the interest. And interest rates are going to go from 8 to maybe 12%, depending on the deal, depending on the risk level. And that private credit, like really consistently has averaged around like 10 to 11% returns in our industry. It's a pretty high rate environment, right? It's secured by the real estate. So if the borrower defaults, you can foreclose on the property. Sounds great, right? Like that's wonderful, but there is totally a catch to this. And it's a big one. You need capital to play this game. You need at least $25,000, probably more. And if somebody defaults, you're now in the foreclosure business, right? Which is definitely not passive. You're, depending on where you are, if it's a deed of trust state or mortgage state, or if it's judicial or non-judicial, you're now foreclosing on this, taking that property back. Plus, there's a huge risk of fraud. Some borrowers flat out, like especially right now with AI, I have seen this happen so many times in our industry, just in the last like 12 months, where people are falsifying bank statements. That's fraud. Or they're falsifying transfer titles to get loans. You have to know what you're doing and what to look for, or you need to work with like an established person or an established fund that vets these deals for you, a private money broker even. Because private money lending, in my opinion, it's for experienced investors who have capital, who want income without owning the property directly. Definitely not for beginners, right? Okay, so now you know my top 5 strategies for passive income, but which one should you start with? So here's what I've seen from investors who have really done a great job building their passive income. They break it up into phases. Phase 1 is they start pretty active, kind of over on this side of the spectrum. They buy 1 or 2 properties, they manage it themselves, they learn the business inside and out, they get really good at this. Then they move on to phase 2. By the way, this phase is not passive, but it's where you build a good foundation, right? Then they move on to phase 2. They start adding systems, they hire property management, they automate what they can, and they really focus on buying right so the numbers work even after all of these fees. They get really good at phase 2 before moving on to phase 3. Now they start to scale what they currently have, or many of my friends have diversified, right? So what do I mean by scale? They buy more rentals, diversification. Other people will shift their capital into REITs or syndications or private lending once they have a good framework, good foundational knowledge to evaluate deals, right? So these gurus who say, start with passive income, that's stupid. That is absolute fallacy. They are selling you a pipe dream. They are selling you a fantasy. Real wealth comes from understanding this business first and then building systems that run without you. Now, can you start with REITs and syndications if you just want some exposure? Sure. But if you want real life-changing passive income, checks coming in every single month, the active phase is where the magic is going to happen. Okay, great. That's it. Let's bring this home. Passive income from real estate is absolutely real. Lots of people have it, but it's a spectrum, right? It's not a light switch of active income versus passive income. There's self-managed rentals, highest returns, most amount of work. Really great for learning a fundamental knowledge base. Then there's rentals with property management, which is semi-passive, solid returns if you buy right. Then there's REITs, truly passive, super low barrier of entry, start with $100. Long-term returns are fairly good, 8 to 10%, basically matches S&P 500. Then you have syndications, hands off entirely, but it's risky, so do your homework. And then private lending, which is income coming in without ownership, but this requires capital and knowledge. So the strategy that most beginners should start with, honestly, it kind of depends on your capital and your time. So if you have more time than you have money, then start with active and learn the business. But if you've got the capital and no time, I would say start with REITs while you educate yourself on some bigger plays. Either way, now you know more than 90% of people who dream about passive income, but they never take action. Guys, if this has helped you, hit subscribe. I've got more videos breaking down how to get more deals, how to get them faster by JVing with other investors, and how to do it safely without getting your deal stolen. So if that interests you, click on this video here.